I will be presenting the work that I did to establish or try to establish a condition report of the Notre-Dame Cathedral after the fire on a digital version. So this work took place between the month of November 2019, sorry, to the month of April 2021. And the very first step of this work was to experiment between the IOD platform and the cathedral to see if we could be able to use this platform to create a series of projects and to annotate a series of projects accordingly to a diagnosis made by the architects. A very small presentation of the platform. The IOD platform is a reality-based 3D annotation platform for the collaborative documentation of heritage artifacts. So it allows us to create projects or scenes with a series of photographies. And with the generation of a 3D point cloud, we will have then the ability to annotate with a series of groups, layers, and also the ability to collaborate with different people as well in the same projects. So my work began by an experiment on the platform. At the time when this work began, we didn't have the full diagnosis made by the architects and the specialists of the field. So the goal was really to make personal observations on the platform to really try to see if this method could work. So the first thing was to try to test the different images that were available to create a series of projects, see if the point cloud was dense enough, precise enough to make specific annotations on them. There was also the goal to test the organization of the projects. To see how the groups could be named, the layers could be named, and how we could fill in a series of personal observations, for example, with the creation of the user descriptors that you can see here on the right. And we also had the idea to test the ability of the platform to handle a very large number of annotations. For example, here, this is a project of the vaults of the cathedral. And here you have between 200 and 300 different annotations. So it was also very important to see if we could still navigate quite freely inside the project and if it was still something that would be usable with the final diagnosis. So while testing these different aspects, we also had to test them on different objects to see how the platform would behave. So you already saw images of the inside of the vaults and the outside of the vaults as well, with the remains that were from the roof originally. Tests were also made on stained glass windows to see if all the annotation could be propagated very well between the different photographies and to the point cloud. And here is a short movie that I made at the time to see a bit of the process. So here is the platform and the project that could be created, for example, for the inside of the vaults. Here you can see, sorry, I'm losing my voice a little bit. You can see the creation of the groups and the different layers that allowed us to organize the diagnosis, but also to name very precisely each part of the cathedral. So it is also important to note that at this time, everything that I did was really based on personal observation. We didn't have the final diagnosis that was made by the architects and the professionals. So the goal was really to only observe things and to annotate them to see if the platform could really work with such projects. Here, if I speed up a bit, you can see the annotations that are made for the different alterations that could be observed. So of course, you had multiple possibilities to change the color or the shape of the annotation that you wanted to create, which really allowed to create a diagnosis that could be really precise. And here on the side, you always had the possibility to create what we called user descriptors, which could allow us to fill in a series of information. Here, for example, the type of alteration that were observed, but also the cause. And here you can see what it looked like once every annotation was made. So this is the final test, as I could say. So here you had, same thing as before, around 300 different annotations, each named and precisely informed. And this is the result on the 3D point cloud. So you have also the possibility to change a little bit of the settings to have the view that was really fitted to the observation that wanted to be made. And the second step after that was really to create the construction of the different project for the digital version of the diagnosis. So this work began in the summer of 2020. So as it was already said this morning, we really had an enormous quantity of information and of images. We received around 1,500 photographies from the outside of the cathedral. So there was really a big step to classify, to choose and select the most important images, and then to divide them in a series of smaller projects that could be directly imported in the platform. So here is a bit of an example of how the cathedral was divided into smaller projects for IOD. So you can see with the different colors that the cathedral was divided by levels and also by spawn. So the goal was really to create a total of 116 different projects that were really small pieces of the cathedral, so that they could be seen very precisely in the IOD platform, but also that could be consulted all together later in the Notre-Dame viewer that will also be presented by Violette in the rest of the afternoon. And after the division and the establishment of the different project made, it was time to create a type of a prototype for the annotation of the final diagnosis. So the architects had sent us a precise diagnosis for one of the piece of the cathedral, and the goal was now to try and replicate that into the IOD platform. So to see precise elements like the way we wanted to name our groups, our layers, the way we wanted to name the annotation. And all of this work was really important because this method would then be replicated to the 115 other projects that would be created in the following month. And the third and the final step of this work was to finally establish this digital diagnosis on the rest of the projects and to establish this method on every one of the scenes. So here is, for example, how it could look like on a span of the choir. So as you can see, we have something very similar to the work that was previously done for the other span. So the goal was really to have something that could be read in the same way for all the different pieces of the cathedral, to have a really one color code, one way to name every file. So when we would consult all of these projects together, we would still have something that would make sense with multiple scenes. Here you have the final listing of every project. So as you can see, every piece of the cathedral is provided with an identification number. And this number then allows us to consult the project. So it's really an ID card to find them in IOD, but also to import them directly in the viewer. So this list is really the final naming of every project that were created for the different zoning of the cathedral. Here you can see one of the piece of the cathedral inside of the Notre-Dame viewer. Here, if I move on, you can see how it would look like with multiple scenes in one environment. You also have multiple possibilities to see the scenes separately, but also with multiple at the time. And I think that this movie will illustrate a bit more what I explained. So here you had, again, the first step of the work, which was the creation of the project and the naming of every single projects. And here you also had the possibility that wasn't shown in the previous movie to share this project with the other collaborators that you could work with. And here the final steps of the naming and the creation of the groups and layers in the final scenes. So as you can see, we had 3 different layers, one for really the sculpted details, one for the stained windows, and one for the stone. And this division was established by the architect. So once again, the goal was really to do something that was really close to what the professionals had previously established. Here, once the annotations were made, the description sheet were then created and completed. So for example, here you can see description sheets that are linked to the windows, and I wanted to include a series of informations according to the date, the author, and the restorations that were envisioned. And here is the result on the point cloud, so in the 3D space of the projects. And finally, I had an example of this scene imported directly in the viewer. So you can have every information that you previously filled in the IOD platform that can be here imported. You also have your same color code for every one of the annotations. And here, what it would look like with multiple scenes in the same environment. So here we had a total of 9 scenes, 3 per floor. And you can really navigate through the project. So once again, you will have a little bit more details about this work with Violette later on. So here you can see that we have this time every scene from the choir that were imported in the viewer onto the global point cloud of the cathedral. So here is the end of my presentation. So this work was finally done in April 2021. Now every one of these 116 projects were completed, annotated, and can be imported in the platform.